In search of elegance. What an unusual topic for pragmatists. People like you and me who want to change things, want to fix communities. Or is it? In search of excellence might have been a more appropriate topic. You can go to this next slide. You may know the text published in 1983. Tom Peters did a book based upon the best habits of the best companies, which some have hailed as the greatest business book of the last century. And excellence is an important business practice. An existing or NGO or nonprofit leader, your desire, I need my glasses. There we go. As an existing or aspiring NGO and nonprofit leader, your desire for your studies is probably so that you can make a greater difference, you can be better at your calling, and you can maximize the time that you have and the resources that are put at your use to fulfill the mission of your organization. So knowing what constitutes excellence in your profession is important. One of my doctoral dissertation reviewers was a scholar at the University of Bath in the UK, and she established her scholarly reputation on examples of poor quality evinced by well-intentioned, faith-based development organizations. I don't imagine any of us would want to find ourselves on her list. So it's important to know what qualifies excellence among NGO and nonprofit leaders. What will you need to know to make the greatest impact in your work? Here's what the literature says. One of the things that you need to do is develop a complex understanding of poverty, or whatever the issue is that brought you here today for your studies. You'll need to understand the source of the problem and the many responses, their effectiveness, or their lack thereof. You must also develop in-depth financial understanding. Where does the money come from? What are the donors' expectations? How will you document the outcomes that they expect in exchange for more money? Accountability and communication are also important. How will you exhibit transparency that engenders trust, both with those you are serving, but also with those who are providing the resources you need to maximize your vision? There is a level of professionalism that will be expected of you that may run counter to your nature. This begins with financial management and accountability, but also includes high expectations for good governance, serving clients, and communicating with stakeholders. It is not acceptable to have only good intentions. Good outcomes must follow. You must be planners, intentional about how your actions will create change spanning cultures and context. You'll need to cut across many segments of society that have activity in your area of work, including business and government, faith and family, individual and tribe. Your ability to cross cultures must also include not only those you serve, but those with whom you serve. Navigating the political realities that exist within your team among expats and indigenous colleagues, between the field and headquarters. You'll need to become collaborators with others who have a vested interest in your work, acknowledging that the solution you seek may have a negative impact on others. You will become a champion for your organization, especially with donor and other financial contributors, or the CFO who determines your budget. If it hasn't been your reality yet, Fundraising will become an ever-present activity. Can you tell I was a fundraiser for 20 years? See, all I'm talking about is money and accountability here. And you will become continuous learners and collaborators. No mission, no ministry, no development organization will by itself satisfy the UN's Millennium Development Goals, will eradicate AIDS, will retire human traffickers. Only like-minded people and organizations working together despite their differences and effecting the latest learning can make the kind of significant strides we're all counting on. I could go on and on, but in the time remaining, I'd rather digress. I'd rather talk about elegance. Excellence is essential to the work that you do, but I believe that a robust response to poverty and other social issues demands elegant responses. Excellence in practice favors the left side of our brain, the more rational part of those of us who value organization, systems, outcomes. But both we and those we serve have dual hemispheres in our brains. And the right side values beauty, originality, and creativity, and should also be engaged. So, what is elegance, and why should it matter to people like us? Folks who have problems to solve and communities to fix. Elegance has many meanings. If you Google it, you get lots of images of wonderful fabric and pretty dresses. But I'm going to suggest a richer meaning. To me, since I have the mic, I will describe elegance as solutions to people's needs that are characterized by originality, beauty, timelessness, surprise, and simplicity. So how do you know elegance when you see it? Let's take a test. So what are these? Anybody know, please? This is we're engaging you. No need to raise your hands. Bifocals. What makes them elegant? Could anyone guess? Well, specifically, these are Benjamin Franklin's bifocals. The story is that as an ambassador to France, Benjamin Franklin, who was wined and dined in many of the courts of France's elites, had trouble viewing both his food, which was close to him, and his guests, which were farther away. His language facility in French was okay if he could read your lips while you spoke. But as he read your lips, he could not decipher the strange foods that were on his plate. And so he did this all through the meals. And it probably made for a very unsatisfactory dining experience and not a very good ambassadorial one. And so he determined to derive an elegant solution. What do you think makes this elegant? Well, think of my definition that I gave you earlier. Does it meet human need? Is it original? Is it timeless? This was the 18th century. Might it have been surprising? And it's simple, going from 2 items to 1. Now for something that you probably relate to more easily. What makes the iPhone elegant? Anyone?
Ease of use.
Ease of use?
Small.
What's that?
Small.
Small?
Simplicity.
Simple? Remember, the predecessor to this was the BlackBerry. Lots of buttons, lots of functions. Does it meet a human need? Is there beauty there? Was it original? Was it a surprise? What happens every time the next one's coming out? People go crazy. And it's simplified. The experience of engaging through this communication vehicle. How about this next one? Does anybody recognize that?
Corkscrew?
What's that?
Corkscrew?
Corkscrew! Yes! We're going to get to touch things. My son, my eldest son, is a sommelier in New York City. And he assures me, sommelier is a wine steward. He pours wine full time. What a job. But he assures me that this is the standard sommelier wine cork cooler. And I'll pass this around. But it involves 4 different activities. The first is the knife, to remove the material that covers the cork, usually a foil or paper type material. Then the second is the screw, to engage the cork. The third is this little thing, whatever it's called, to give you leverage to remove the cork from the bottle. And then the fourth action is a little bit of elbow grease to actually physically pull the cork from the bottle. So this is your standard thing. This is one that was made for the home use, a little bit of more ergonomics going on, a little curved because we're not as tough as sommeliers. And then this is more of an antique version that actually preceded both of these, which I think is very cool, but I've never been able to get it to work. We send these around here. How is this possibly in the same family? Let me tell you something very cool about this cork screw puller. This only requires 2 actions, and they're both the same. 2 twisting actions, and you accomplish all of that which was required by a minimum of 4 different actions, all of which add different things. Plus, it has the famous OXO aerodynamic grip. I gave you my definition of elegance, and by now I'm sure you're wondering, what the heck does this have to do with why I'm here? Let me give you a few other definitions that I think are better, and maybe we'll start to get a sense of why we're talking about elegance. This is from Michael Lincourt, who's a writer on architecture. He says, elegance is the symbiosis of excellence and magnificence that will provide satisfaction to both its users and surrounding society, which is the ultimate endeavor of any creative work. And innovation blogger Matthew May writes this: elegance combines unusual simplicity with surprising power and is characterized by 4 key elements: seduction, subtraction, symmetry, and sustainability. I'm guessing I may be the first residency speaker to speak of both elegance and seduction as part of the SLD residencies. So now that I have your attention, let me suggest for you why elegance is important for those of us gathered in this room tonight, and that which we feel called to do. Number 1, elegance is important because designers or people who create solutions function at higher levels when they are challenged to include elegance with functionality. They give it their best. When you ask somebody, or when you are asked to do something creative, to solve a problem, to create a response to a pestering issue, and asked to do it beautifully. It summons all of who you are. It engages not only half your brain, but your full brain. And that is a reason why I think it's important for those of us who believe that we, and hope and pray in the most humblest fashion, that we are bringing hope to somebody, or hope to a community, or hope to the human condition, that we include both sides of our brains. Elegance is important because the user engages more deeply with something that is beautiful. This has been demonstrated. You will have more than 30% greater use of an item that is beautiful. Think about how this might matter with somebody who's deciding whether or not to put up that mosquito net tonight and protect themselves from malaria, or whether or not to go the extra mile and replace that kerosene lamp with a solar-powered one, which won't diminish their ability to breathe. If those items are made with a commitment to elegance, 30% of the time, more frequently, the person will choose to use them. I think that's a compelling reason to engage with our work elegantly. I think elegance is important, number 3, because it challenges preconceived notions and it smashes stereotypes about what is good enough for the poor. When you serve disadvantaged populations, they are not used to receiving the choice cuts. And so when there's a commitment to beauty, it changes things. It elevates expectations. It engages people in ways in which may have never been touched, given the conditions in which they live. Go to the next slide. Our partner, Esperanza US in North Philadelphia, has taught me this better than most. In their facilities, they engage more than 2,000 low-income Hispanic clients in North Philadelphia daily. And yet, their facility is spotless. Their facility is brightly colored. Their facility is safe. Their facility is staffed by people in professional attire. And their facility is adorned with original art. And you step in that place, and it's like you've been transported to another world. And guess what? Transformation follows that.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, because of these things, all of these things, I think elegance has great ramifications for those of us who will design services and create systems that address the needs of the disenfranchised. The design community is beginning to recognize this as a school within the School of Design. Go to the next slide. My eyes were opened to this several years ago when the Design Council of the United Kingdom recognized a community organizer with their Designer of the Year award. Hilary Cotton was a scholar who left her post and went to live in the slums of Brazil, and as a result came back to London to serve the poorest of the poor. One of the first things she decided to tackle was to create the needs of seniors who had fallen through the cracks and were not able to access the health system. They were not only sick and poor, but alone. And she was a front runner of the thing that we now call aging in place. She was a front runner of redesigning an elegant solution which enables seniors to remain in their homes and yet receive the care which makes both their health and their quality of life persist and greater and stronger. You can go to the next one. I was also reminded of this concept of how elegant solutions impact social issues through a friend of a friend named Paul. Paul redesigned kitchens for residents who have memory loss. And one of the things Paul realized is that if you can see through the door of the refrigerator, you don't have to wonder about what's on the other side. And he also realized that you can help people navigate space by actually creating traffic lanes in the floor. And Paul went on to develop and design these kinds of applications at senior living centers throughout the West Coast. And it, to me, is just another elegant solution to a problem and an issue. Next one. I'd like to close with one of our own homegrown elegant solutions here that we've had the opportunity to participate with at Eastern. Our partner in the Hispanic community I mentioned before is Reverend Luis Cortez Jr. and his organization Esperanza presented us with a challenge that had many sources and begged for an elegant solution. The low number of Hispanic young people in the U.S. who were actually able to enroll in college were dropping out at alarming rates in excess of 90%. As a result of that, many of these young people would not be able to earn the kind of income to pay back their federal loans. And as a result of that, that default would ensure their inability to ever borrow again. Not for a car, not for a mortgage, not to start a small business, and not to finish their school. So this was a big deal, and still is. But he challenged us to work with him to derive a solution for that. The reasons for the lack of persistence among Hispanic students were complex, but are very well documented. They were typically underprepared, having gone to the poorest schools in mostly urban systems. They experienced language difficulties. Many of them didn't speak English or had only a middling understanding and grasp of the language. They had cultural differences that expressed themselves differently than the most school district operations. And they are subject to regular financial and family emergencies. I'm over time already, but I just want to give you a little bit of what we've been able to do over the last 12 years through constant iteration and trying to get it right. I think we've designed an elegant solution. It's called Esperanza College. Students at Esperanza have their first contact with exclusively Hispanic people. That does not happen at the community college. Students at Esperanza learn from Hispanic faculty, staff, and administrators working alongside those from other ethnicities and races. Students at Esperanza may begin learning in Spanish, but they will all end learning in English. Their learning program is prescribed. They learn in cohorts like most of you, so we create learning communities that are mentored and anchored by an engaged faculty member. They will receive remedial instruction as needed, but we won't make them take it outside of class and charge them and not grant them credits, which is the way it normally happens, which diminishes their ability to finish the program at the back end because we're making them borrow for non-credit courses. We work the remediation in through the courses that they're already paying to take. And so while they're learning, they are remediating and accelerating their learning. And while their financial requirements are significant, they each make sacrifices in order to take advantage of this program. They are not onerous. We have repriced the program based upon what we believe is their ability to afford. As a result, we have realized a graduation rate nearing 50% versus the 9% at the community colleges. And 60% of our two-year graduates continue on to the bachelor's degree. We have a handful who have attained their master's degrees. Why is this an elegant solution? It meets people's needs. It was original. We were the first private Hispanic serving institution in the Commonwealth and the first faith-based one in the nation. It was original. I believe it's a timeless solution. It's surprising. You can't imagine the number of people who told us it could not be done. And, despite the hard work, it's surprisingly simple. In fact, the simpler you make things, the more likely they are to succeed. So, my time has expired, and I want to leave you with a challenge and a question. During your time at Eastern, which is a time that you have set aside and you have made sacrificial investments in order to build your skills and prepare responses to those things that where challenges outweigh opportunities and that burden your hearts. During this time, what will you create? During this time, what will you invent? What will you build? And when you build it, will you please build it beautifully? Thank you very much.